coming to the end of chapter 2 in A New Earth. I believe there are just a few sections left for us to read. And we reached the passage titled Wanting, the Need for More. The ego identifies with having, but its satisfaction in having is a relatively shallow and short-lived one. Concealed within it remains a deep-seated sense of dissatisfaction, of incompleteness, of not enough. I don't have enough yet, by which the ego really means I am not enough yet. As we have seen, having, the concept of ownership, is a fiction created by the ego to give itself solidity and permanency and make itself stand out, make itself special. Since you cannot find yourself through having, however, there is another more powerful drive underneath it that pertains to the structure of the ego, the need for more, which we could also call wanting. No ego can last for long without the need for more. Therefore, wanting keeps the ego alive much more than having. The ego wants to want more than it wants to have, and so the shallow satisfaction of having is always replaced by more wanting. This is the psychological need for more, that is to say, more things to identify with. It is an addictive need, not an authentic one. In some cases, the psychological need for more, or the feeling of not enough, that is so characteristic of the ego, becomes transferred to the physical level, and so turns into insatiable hunger. The sufferers of bulimia will often make themselves vomit so they can continue eating. Their mind is not hungry. Sorry, read that again. Their mind is hungry, not their body. This eating disorder would become healed if the sufferers, instead of being identified with their mind, could get in touch with their body and so feel the true needs of the body rather than the pseudo needs of the egoic mind. Some egos know what they want and pursue their aim with grim and ruthless determination. Genghis Khan, Stalin, Hitler, to give just a few larger-than-life examples. The energy behind their wanting, however, creates an opposing energy of equal intensity that in the end leads to their downfall. In the meantime, they make themselves and many others unhappy, or in the larger-than-life examples, create hell on earth. Most egos have conflicting wants. They want different things at different times, or may not even know what they want, except that they don't want what is, the present moment. Unease, restlessness, boredom, anxiety, dissatisfaction are the result of unfulfilled wanting. Wanting is structural, so no amount of content can provide lasting fulfillment as long as that mental structure remains in place. Intense wanting that has no specific object can often be found in the still developing ego of teenagers, some of whom are in a permanent state of negativity and dissatisfaction. The physical needs for food, water, shelter, clothing, and basic comforts could be easily met for all humans on the planet were it not for the imbalance of resources created by the insane and rapacious need for more, the greed of the ego. It finds collective expression in the economic structures of this world, such as the huge corporations, which are egoic entities that compete with each other for more. Their only blind aim is profit. They pursue that aim with absolute ruefulness. Nature, animals, people, even their own employees, are no more than digits on a balance sheet, lifeless objects to be used, then discarded. The thought forms of me and mine, of more than, of I want, I need, I must have, and of not enough, pertain not to content, but to the structure of the ego. The content is interchangeable. As long as you don't recognize those thought forms within yourself, as long as they remain unconscious, you will believe in what they say. You will be condemned to acting out those unconscious thoughts, condemned to seeking and not finding, because when those thought forms operate, no possession, place, person, or condition will ever satisfy you. No content will satisfy you as long as the egoic structure remains in place. No matter what you have or get, you won't be happy. You will always be looking for something else that promises greater fulfillment, that promises to make your incomplete sense of self complete and fill that sense of lack you feel within. The next section is titled Identification with the Body. Apart from objects, another basic form of identification is with my body. Firstly, the body is male or female, and so the sense of being a man or woman takes up a significant part of most people's sense of self. Gender becomes identity. Identification with gender is encouraged at an early age, and it forces you into a role, into conditioned patterns of behavior that affect all aspects of your life, not just sexuality. It is a role many people become completely trapped in, even more so in some of the traditional societies than in Western culture, where identification with gender is beginning to lessen somewhat. In some traditional cultures, the worst fate a woman can have is to be unwed or barren, and for a man to lack sexual potency and not be able to produce children. Life's fulfillment is perceived to be fulfillment of one's gender identity. In the West, it is the physical appearance of the body that contributes greatly to the sense of who you think you are, its strength or weakness, its perceived beauty or ugliness relative to others. For many people, their sense of self-worth is intimately bound up with their physical strength, good looks, fitness, and external appearance. Many feel a diminished sense of self-worth because they perceive their body as ugly or imperfect. In some cases, the mental image or concept of my body is a complete distortion of reality. A young woman may think of herself as overweight and therefore starve herself, when in fact she is quite thin. She cannot see her body anymore. All she sees is the mental concept of her body, which says, I am fat, or I will become fat. At the root of this condition lies identification with the mind. As people have become more and more mind identified, which is the intensification of egoic dysfunction, there has also been a dramatic increase in the incidence of anorexia in recent decades. If the sufferer could look at her body without the interfering judgments of her mind, or even recognize those judgments for what they are, instead of believing in them, or better still, if she could feel her body from within, this would initiate her healing. Those who are identified with their good looks, physical strength, or abilities experience suffering when those attributes begin to fade and disappear, as of course they will. Their very identity that was based on them is then threatened with collapse. In either case, ugly or beautiful, people derive a significant part of their identity, be it negative or positive, from their body. To be more precise, they derive their identity from the I thought that they erroneously attach to the mental image or concept of their body, which after all is no more than a physical form that shares the destiny of all forms, impermanence, and ultimate decay. Equating the physical sense perceived body that is destined to grow old, wither and die, with I always leads to suffering sooner or later. To refrain from identifying with the body doesn't mean that you neglect, despise, or no longer care for it. If it is strong, beautiful, or vigorous, you can enjoy and appreciate those attributes while they last. You can also improve the body's condition through right nutrition and exercise. If you don't equate the body with who you are, when beauty fades, vigor diminishes, or the body becomes incapacitated, this will not affect your sense of worth or identity in any way. In fact, as the body begins to weaken, the formless dimension, the light of consciousness, can shine more easily through the fading form. It is not just people with good or near perfect bodies who are likely to equate it with who they are. You can just as easily identify with a problematic body and make the body's imperfection, illness, or disability into your identity. You may then think and speak of yourself as a sufferer of this or that chronic illness or disability. you receive a great deal of attention from doctors and others who constantly confirm to you your conceptual identity as a sufferer or a patient. You then unconsciously cling to the illness because it has become the most important part of who you perceive yourself to be. It has become another thought form with which the ego can identify. Once the ego has found an identity, it does not want to let it go. Amazingly, but not infrequently, the ego, in search of a stronger identity, can and does create illnesses in order to strengthen itself through them. Okay, so we've come to the end of that section. And since we've talking about identifying with the body, I'll read on with one more section, which I believe will closely tie in with this. And it's called Feeling the Inner Body. Although body identification is one of the most basic forms of ego, the good news is that it is also the one that you can mostly easily go beyond. This is done not by trying to convince yourself that you are not your body, but by shifting your attention from the external form of your body and from thoughts about your body, beautiful, ugly, strong, weak, too fat, too thin, to the feeling of aliveness inside it. No matter what your body's appearance is on the outer level, beyond the outer form, it is an intensely alive energy field. If you are not familiar with inner body awareness, close your eyes for a moment and find out if there is life inside your hands. Don't ask your mind. It will say, "I can't feel anything." Probably it will also say, "Give me something more interesting to think about." So instead of asking your mind, go to the hands directly. By this, I mean become aware of the subtle feeling of aliveness inside them. It is there. You just have to go there with your attention to notice it. You may get a slight tingling sensation at first, then a feeling of energy or aliveness. If you hold your attention in your hands for a while, the sense of aliveness will intensify. Some people won't even have to close their eyes. They will be able to feel their inner hands at the same time as they read this. They go to your feet, then go to your feet. Keep your attention there for a minute or so, and begin to feel your hands and feet at the same time. Then incorporate other parts of the body, legs, arms, abdomen, chest, and so on, into that feeling until you are aware of the inner body as a global sense of aliveness. What I call the inner body isn't really the body anymore, but life energy, the bridge between form and formlessness. Make it a habit to feel the inner body as often as you can. After a while, you won't need to close your eyes anymore to feel it. For example, see if you can feel the inner body whenever you listen to someone. It almost seems like a paradox. When you are in touch with the inner body, you are not identified with your body anymore, nor are you identified with your mind. This is to say, you are no longer identified with form, but moving away from form identification toward formlessness, which we may also call being. It is your essence identity. Body awareness not only anchors you in the present moment, it is a doorway out of the prison that is the ego. It also strengthens the immune system and the body's ability to heal itself. So I'm going to leave it at this point. So today we covered the passages of wanting, the need for more. And as with other passages, perhaps we can reflect upon each of these titles and the essence of each of these passages that we've read. So wanting, the need for more. For some of us that may bring up very specific examples or very specific conditions or behaviors that we may recognize immediately as wanting more. And for others it may just be something to hold in your awareness, to catch yourself almost in a state of wanting more. And the second passage we read was titled Identification with the Body. And I don't think there's anyone out there that has not gone through identification with the body in some way, whether it's a positive or negative. And perhaps you can allow this to almost be absorbed. Sometimes it's not a case of trying to figure it out and remember things and calculate. You can almost just sit with this passage of identifying with our bodies and just almost see what arises from there. For myself, there's negativity arises from my body. There's judgments about it of me being perhaps overweight or not good looking. This used to be a very strong identification, and it's only due to my awareness of it that this is slowly being dissolved. It's still very much there and affects me day to day, but you can sense that it's not as strong as it used to be. There's almost an inner knowing of it, an unmeasurable knowing. That there's a little bit of space there now. If my appearance, my external body comes into my awareness or comes into my thinking, and then in the following last section we've read, it was titled Feeling the Inner Body. So this passage was something that practical step that you could try immediately, and perhaps some of you followed along with the directions as it was being read. Or after this episode ends, perhaps that's something you can directly experience. And you can begin perhaps with the hands, closing your eyes and holding your hands out and asking yourself the question, how do I know I have hands? Which can seem completely absurd to the mind, but by asking your awareness and directly going in to the sensation of your hands, and then, as Eckhart guides us there to say, to go into the sensations of your feet without looking or without thinking about it, but just a direct feeling, direct sensations of the inner energy field. And of course there are many body scan meditations out there as well, so there's something you can, as well as doing as your own free practice, as Eckhart suggests, when you are talking to someone, perhaps that's a good opportunity to go into your inner body. It's a way for you to fully anchor in the present moment, to fully listen to what is being said. And by being in your inner body, it will stop your mind thinking of a response to this person. This person is speaking, and quite often our natural mind activities to already have a response ready, to wait for a gap and then to get in what you want to say. But being in your inner body when you are listening, it's a very useful practice. So yes, there are some very big things to reflect upon. And for those of you new to these kind of spiritual practices, these spiritual discoveries, going within, this can seem quite heavy, quite a, perhaps it's emotional. Perhaps some of you out there have had tremendous torment with the body, with how you look and labels, and maybe this is the time to set yourself free of all of that. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I wish you well in this one moment, and I'll speak to you again very soon.